Receipts. The proof is in the conversation.
All right, welcome everybody to the Receipts podcast. I'm your host, Robert Galop, and I am really happy to have with us today Thomas Howe. Thomas, great to be with you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Robert. Really nice to be here.
For sure. So real quick, I'm sure a lot of our audience members know who you are, but for those that don't, give us some quick background on who you are and what you've been doing for the last, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't, my name is Thomas. I'm a communications developer, and I live up in the Northeast. I'm second generation. My father worked for Raytheon growing up, and he worked in a group that used communications technologies. They designed torpedoes. I don't design torpedoes, um, but it was just really fascinating to me. And I had a chance to obviously grow up in that environment, and they taught me to program when I was young. So and I've never stopped. And so I spent my entire life in designing communications products. Early on, it was all the analog, radio, RF stuff. We didn't have DSPs yet. And then I transitioned from doing that into a company called PictureTel, which was a real pioneer in video conferencing. And when I got to PictureTel, it was my first time working on standards. And PictureTel was a company that believed that a good go-to-market strategy was to advocate for a protocol that they thought should exist, and then design products that work for the protocol. And if you think about the way phones work, there was a saying that we used to have that the biggest optimist in the world was the person who bought the very first video conferencing system, because you'd have no one to talk to. so so when I got to PictureTel, I was involved with the first standards like 320, which was the first ISDN standard for video conferencing, then 323, which became the first voice over IP, and I was part of the net meeting team that contributed, and that was a PictureTel gig, right? And that's kind of how he came to market. And I worked on the DSL modem, and I've done a lot of other work, but the stuff that I'm working on now, I'm just really happy. I'm just uh, when I don't think technology is necessarily an old man's game. And so for me to like really experience, this part of the market at my ripe age has been just great. I've really enjoyed it. So the last 4 years, we've been working on what's called vCon. It's a new standard in the IATF. And if you're not familiar with the IATF, those are the nice guys who brought you all the internet protocols like mail and the web and DNS and the like. The vCon is a file format designed to contain a conversation just like a XLS would contain a spreadsheet. And the reason we need a file format for containing conversations is twofold. One is that we can take conversations from one system and bring them to another. Not every system does everything right. But also, as we bring the files from one place to another, we know that they're real. We know where they came from. We can track them. We know that the contents is real and not a deep fake. Has all kinds of really interesting qualities, which allow us to manage personal data correctly, which we also haven't done generally. Your recordings of your face and your voice are really sensitive, and so to be able to manage those and to protect those and guarantee that they're real, it's a big deal in the world of AI. And when we first came out with the vCon, it was about 18 months before ChatGPT hit the consciousness. And even though I'd been working in standards my whole life, I really felt like a kook, frankly, standing on stage saying, "Hey, the robots are coming, and we've got to solve this problem."
Yeah.
Thank God ChatGPT came out, because it made me seem like not so crazy. But for a while there, I was really concerned about it. I still am in a way, but I think we've got a good start on it.
Yeah, cool. And we'll dig into vCons here in a
Mm.
second. I
Yeah, of
really
course.
feel, and we've talked about this in the past. We're really at a revolutionary stage in the industry.
Mm.
But I
Mhm.
I want to touch on IETF. So I
Mm.
had the pleasure a year ago to be at one of the vCon summits, and sitting in the room. I've never felt so dumb as I did sitting in that room. So we had
That's a
the
good place.
Yeah, I think the guy that created the UDP standard was in there, and some of
Yeah.
the
Oh
other
yeah.
like absolute geniuses that have been involved over the years. So, who are some of the
It's-
fun personalities and people you've gotten to work with through processes at IETF?
Well, yeah, no, there's lots of fun personalities and stuff. And by the way, I feel the same way. I think it's not just you. And I've heard often that the IATF is the most dangerous place in technology. The microphone at the IATF. Because you're surrounded by people who are smarter than you, and who actually think they are smarter than you sometimes, and so they're not afraid to like show it. So the IETF is it's a great organization. It's an open organization. People attend the IETF as individuals, so companies don't go, people go. And part of that reason is because all the work that we do is in the open and it's free. And there's real good reasons for that, in terms of indemnification, in terms of reach. Just imagine you're the guy who wrote email, right? And there's a bug in your protocol. How many lawyers do you think will be chasing you around town for
Right.
having done that, right? So there's a lot of other like, implications of it, and it's actually also pretty close to a monopoly, right? Like use a different email, go ahead, right? There isn't a different email, there isn't a different web.
Yeah.
And so we're really cognizant of making sure that the process is open and transparent, and that we're encouraging the world to adopt it. And so to make it open also helps us address those real life things about the internet. So a lot of the people who are in the IETF, there's three kinds of people in the IETF. I represent one kind, which is the geek kind. There's two other kinds of people in the IETF. They're the people who are really socially pro-social NGOs like ACLU and Save the Children and UNICEF, and the people who are really keeping an eye out for people. One of the ideas of the IETF is that we work for the end user. We work to make the internet better for people, not for the power. I heard in the last IETF, and it really just stuck in my head, that a lot of people think the power struggle in the world is left versus right, and it's probably not. It's probably top versus bottom. And we work for the bottom, we work for the people. And so a lot of the IETF protocols are for end user empowerment and protection. And so if you think in the third category are a lot of regulators, a lot of government people, a lot of lawyers, people who are worrying about, how do I govern? How do I, keep speech free and the like. So, and each of those have their own kind of interesting characters among them. So,
Yeah.
the way the IETF works, and this is actually a really interesting part, is so the IETF has working groups, a bunch of people who work together to make a standard. So, like I know I was involved with the vCon, effort, but it's the working group, the people around me together that are doing this together, and we produce engineering quality work from the best thinkers, I hope. And CTOs of a lot of the big companies of Cisco and Microsoft and Mozilla are all regular contributors, as long as the CTO of the ACLU and a whole bunch of other people like that are very much involved with this. So when you have an idea for a protocol, you submit it, and uh, they have a session at the very beginning called dispatch, but the slang is called the gong show. And the reason they call it the Gong Show is because they have 100 ideas that they'd like to consider, but we only have 100. We have to pick the work, right? It's hard for us, and we do it as volunteers, right? This isn't necessarily a commercial effort, although it ends up being almost always. But as people, it's like, so they really have about 3 to 5 things they actually bring into a working group over the 100 submissions about. And thus the Gong Show, because most people don't make it through. And that's when I felt I was like being a complete kind of like, uh, a kook, because I'm like sitting up in
Yeah.
front of the CTOs of all these people saying, we should be doing this. And luckily, I escaped. They accepted the vCon, and then, they approved the working group. And that's the first part of the process. And it takes a few years to get it through because, we are designing for the world. We are designing for every human being. So it's not casual. And so, and then of course in the process you do meet all kinds of interesting characters. I've been able to meet, I haven't met Vint Cerf, the guy who invented the web. He was an IETF guy. Uh, and what the last one was actually really fascinating. We had representatives in from Anthropic and OpenAI who were talking about maybe the IETF should take on the MCP protocol, which is the protocol that's governing the web. Yeah, because a lot of the problems with MCP right now are twofold. One is that there's two protocols, A to A and MCP, and they're kind of overlapping. And who wants that? And secondly, the problems that are in the protocol are security problems. So the protocols like OAuth and TLS are all IETF protocols. So the actual foundation, we're working on post-quantum cryptography. That's a big thing for us now is how do we like secure things when we do quantum computing? So all of those things are active working. So that's why they asked it. So there's all kinds of interesting things going on there. It's fascinating.
Yeah, very cool. And thank goodness we've got an organization like that working on these things, right? And in a world of move fast and break things, doesn't translate well to global standards.
Yeah, it's a very pro-social. It's a very much a bunch of people. One of the people on the working group was Rowan May, and Rowan May was well, he was a senior guy. I'm not sure he was CTO, but senior guy of Doctors Without Borders, and he's been shot at. These are people or defend the defenders. It's a group that does the IT support for activists in Africa. And if you speak up in Africa, there's all kinds of totalitarian governments and authoritarian governments who aren't happy with you speaking up. And so Defend the Defenders is an organization that keeps them safe online, which I think is also really fascinating. So there's all kinds of interesting characters running around the IETF.
Yeah. So let's dig into vCons, which is how you and I met through several people.
Right.
And we'll have more information about vCons in the links underneath in the comments. But at its base, vCon is really just a wrapper that allows us to take any conversation and be able to know what's going on and use it downstream, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I have a little picture on my desk that sort of reminds me what vCons are about. And that is there's a picture of the meter. There's actually in the US government, there's a in the Smithsonian or NIST, they have a rod, which is exactly a meter long. And it's the definition of a meter. There it is. And so the vCons are a definition of a conversation and allows you to define what a conversation is. And the reason it's important is because if you can't define it, you can't make assertions about it. Is it real? Is it fake or is it not fake? Who's in this? Does it contain stuff it shouldn't contain, right? Without a definition, you can't do that. So the vCon is the definition that we can all agree on so that we can test it, we can assert it, we can interchange it, we can share it. So it's really nothing more than just a definition of what conversations are.
Yeah. So we've had a ton of conversations with business owners and IT people about, the power of vCons and what you can do with them. But I think a great story is really the origin story for you. Where this came from, what business need you guys were actually trying to solve. And I've told your story multiple times, and that's really when the light bulb goes off. So give us some quick background.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a little bit of a circle, but it's a fun circle. So when I first came to Strawlid, so Strawlid is the company I work for right now. We sell cars on behalf of new car franchises, and we service about 200 new car dealers, every make from Mercedes to Hyundai. And our jobs are to answer the call when people call, because mostly salespeople are in the showroom. And so when I first came to Strawlid, I came to it because it was a great playground, it was a great sandbox, and it was a place where we didn't have a lot of technology, but we had 100,000 conversations a month. So we had volume, but no way of managing them. And we really thought that if we could capture those conversations and analyze them, we would be, we could do better at our jobs. So that was the idea. And so, through the process, we have a new patent on a kind of phone that travels across the network, which was great. But the problem was that you traveled across the network, but I couldn't get the data out of it. So I'm like, oh shoot, there's no way of getting data out of the phone. And so my patent attorney and I were talking about that, and he said, too bad there's no longer a V card. There should be like a conversational thing for like, how about a vCon? I'm like, that's a great name. So so the vCon was coined, and I got to sit down and start designing what I thought it might be. And the idea was that we would be able to take all these conversations and put them in a standard format and then analyze them. And that's kind of how we started. And then we realized, since we thought maybe because we're car people, and I don't mean to down car people because I kind of am one, but not really. You have your own opinions of your used car salesman, but we kind of think that we were screwing up, right? I live in Boston, we're knuckleheads, we talk funny. Like, okay, if we could do a better job if we actually knew how we were being knuckleheads. So we started listening to them, and we realized it wasn't us being knuckleheads. It was actually revealing of so much that we didn't know about, and stuff that really matters, and not for any evil reason, but it's really hard to communicate everything which happens, but not hard for a robot to hear everything that happens. So that combination became kind of magic for us, and that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And to be clear, without a standard, right, you're stuck working across a bunch of different platforms, some of which make their data very difficult to get out. But with the standard,
Yeah.
you can get in and do anything you want with the data.
Yeah, and I, for those of, I guess I've already copped to being an old man, but when I first, actually, I came in before the web, so I can't even say that. But when we had AOL, right? It was, people loved it because you could get your email, and you could check the weather, and you can get your news and your sports. And for a lot of people, I said, "This is great. This is exactly what I want." And when the internet was first coming in, a lot of people were going, "Well, why do I need the internet? Because AOL has everything." Right. Um, and that phenomenon is exactly what's happening here, which is we have silos, we have data. The same companies that collect the conversations analyze the conversations. They're not broken out, so you can't have a conversation collected for one purpose and analyzed for another purpose. But the fact of the matter is, conversations are such an important data type for businesses and people that no one company could ever possibly analyze all that would need to be analyzed. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And so the vCon allows that data silo to be broken out, that you can now pick a different place for your news and your sports. But for us, it's like you can have your AI do this, or my AI do this, or I could have a different way of presenting it or understanding it. And so that's what the magic of the vCon is. It allows it to travel, but safely, because the data inside it can be really dangerous. So the
Yeah.
fact that you can make it travel safely is like the thing.
Yeah. So I want to touch on security here in a second, but as you're talking about your experience in Strawlid, thanks to vCons, we've been able to have conversations with carriers that are handling phone calls for
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of customers, and we've worked with some of them to actually help them analyze and provide insights back to their customers. Right. So actually a couple of things that we've noticed, again, thanks to vCons and the ability to apply them and use them in AI, is when we did an analysis on a large US-based chain, and we were able to actually pinpoint specific stores that were in urgent need of support from the home office, right? And we're actually able to pinpoint very specific customer issues that if they weren't addressed, were going to blow up. And what was really fun, after we did all of this analysis, we went back and looked at Google reviews, and the Google reviews that people were taking outside of these conversations matched almost perfectly to all of the signals that we saw in the conversations themselves, right?
Yeah, it's not a surprise, right? I mean, most of what happens in a company isn't written down, right? And so, I remember growing up, and they say only the guy who runs a lemonade stand listens to all their customers. Well, the fact is that's true. But what's also true is that person who like runs a lemonade stand can't remember all the conversations. So even that person can't really do it. And there's just so much revealed, darker operational information that is actionable. It's important. the first one that we saw, which is pretty classic, is we thought we were looking for angry customers. We found one who was upset because he drove half an hour or so to like see a car wasn't there. That's a customer
Yeah.
experience issue,
Yeah.
right? That's a real one. Like, okay, why are we advertising cars that aren't there? And who knew that? Well, not the manager. Did it hit the CRM? Did they actually, right? So it's
Yeah.
transformative. It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
We had another interesting one recently with another provider. We actually were running their operations team through vCons, and literally the first conversation that we processed highlighted a huge security gap for them, or customer.
Yeah.
Supposedly, a customer calls in and says, "Hey, I'd like to forward my number," and the rep, super helpful, nicest person on the planet, didn't even validate who was calling. Right. And they went through and forwarded the
Right?
number. No
Yes.
security issue there. Right.
Yes.
So we brought
Yes.
that back to
Yes.
the
Yes.
CEO, and it was a
Yeah.
real eye-opening opportunity.
100%. 100%. That's exactly what we're talking about. Mhm.
Yeah. So I want
That's
to
it.
touch on the security piece, because as we've been looking at conversations, you get a lot of personal information.
Mhm.
You get healthcare
Yep.
information coming across,
Mhm.
payment information,
Yep.
all kinds of problematic data that could be
Yeah.
coming across the wire, right? And
Mhm.
you've been working heavily on the security side of things. So I want to
Yeah.
touch on that, and
Yeah.
how does customer privacy, how does security, and all of these things that we've got to worry about in this escalating age of fraud and AI, how do those things look in a world with vCons and the
Yeah.
ability to do this?
That's a great question. Yeah. And again, the IETF is the worldwide security, group. So it's nice to have that kind of support in the work. So there's a few things I think about. One of the first things I'll say about all of that is I know that we all come with our own experiences. But one of the things I've learned in the vCon work is that there's 1,000 different situations where you need consent, don't need consent, it's lawful, not lawful, over geographies and companies and militaries. It's a very, very large world. So there'll be lots of times and places where different regulations matter or do not matter. That said, they all kind of rely on few fundamentals that I think the vCons really, really address. And I think of the vCons being more like a toolbox that allows you to address the answers, no matter what problem you're trying to solve. So I'll start with the first one, the one you have, which is okay. There's a lot of personal information in that. How do you deal with that? Well, one answer is okay. So remember I said about the meter and how meters are definition.
Hmm.
Well, when you have a definition of a conversation, then you can design third-party tools to tell you, independent third-party tools that may not be built by the same company or interest, but to the same format. Go, there's information in here. There's pre-II in here, and now you can test it, you can validate it, you can make it better, and now you have independent measures of what the contents of a conversation are. And so the first thing is, okay, did you really know what was in there or not? Well, now you know. If this is the format, I can tell you what's in it. And that also translates. So another one of the issues of vCons is integrity. Is it real? Right? Is it been changed? Right? And the internet I'm sure you understand the difference between a secure website and an insecure website. We used to not have that difference. Now we do. And the difference is that one is backed by what's called the public key infrastructure. And so when you go to Amazon and it says S at the end of your HTTP, you know it's probably actually Amazon. But if it's not, well, who knows, right?
Yeah.
Uh, that infrastructure allows us to tell you that this vCon is real or not, and who signed it, who's saying it's real. And that directly addresses deepfakes. Because if you don't know where it came from, if you don't know if it changed, then you don't know. But if you know that Verizon made this and they signed it, chances are, it's real because you know that Verizon signed it, just like you know it's Amazon.
Yeah.
So that's another aspect of econ which is really interesting. You can assert their authenticity, and that helps you solve a deep fake problem. And the last thing about vCons, which I think is really fascinating, and by the way, so as I said, we have lots of people involved in vCons. I'm really appreciative of the work you've done and your team has done. You have such a vibrant part of the vCon marketplace. I'm really just really happy of your particular contributions. But I want to point out my original co-author's contributions, Dan Petrie, just one of my oldest technical friends. And one of his really unique contributions was this idea that you could take a vCon and make a new one that doesn't contain that information, strips it out, redacts it, but points back to the original. You can share the redacted one, keep the original, so that you can control the information you share without losing that it's real, because it points back to the real one, and the real one has the real information, so you can validate that the redaction was actually correct.
Yep.
And now you're starting to track your personal data as it goes across the internet, and that's the last thing I'll talk about. I'm also involved with the Skit team, which I'm really, really proud of. And the Skit team is a distributed ledger that's immutable, that allows you to, like a blockchain, helps you keep track of what's happening. And vCons can interact with with that chain so that everyone can see what happened to your conversation, even when it goes across networks. So you can do governance of AI and governance, even when you've shared your information. So it's really all those things come together to be the toolbox to be able to address whatever compliance you have to, because it does change quite a bit.
Yeah. And a couple of things that we've seen, this plays really well in the financial services industry, where you need to prove that a transaction was authorized, right? And all of those things around that.
That's exactly
it's really
right.
well there. And then you guys, I know you're working with a lot of BPOs as well. In the BPO space, like, name a BPO that's actually compliant with.
Just plain not. Although our first customers might be able to claim that soon. AI governance is a real thing, right? The whole bias, and is it real or not? That's a real thing. But we don't have to wait for governance to hit before we know things are important, because we have data privacy laws. So if you're in Europe, or if you're in California, you have the right to know what they know about you, how your data was processed. You have the right to access it, to correct it, to ask for its deletion. And no BPO can do this with your recordings. They don't have the capacity of doing it. But the vCons allow you to. So now, as a data subject, you can ask those questions, get real answers. And kind of my phrase for it is, it lets the good guys prove they did the right thing. It doesn't solve bad guys from doing bad things, but at least if you're a good guy, you can do the right thing and prove it and not get sued, to know you had the consent to do what you did. All those things are addressed, and that's a big step forward, and I'm happy for that. So
yeah. So, and we could talk for probably another 10 hours and still only scratch the surface of where this industry is going. So,
so much fun.
Yeah,
so much fun.
It is. It really goes back to the internet era, beginning of the internet era, beginning of the SEP and VoIP era. It's a lot of fun right now.
Yeah. How many bites of the apple should a man get?
Yeah.
I've been blessed. I'm totally blessed,
You're
for sure.
Definitely lucky. And what's really cool about this ecosystem is the ecosystem itself. We've got a ton of stuff that's in progress, a lot of people contributing, and a lot of ways for people to get involved. So, the vCon Foundation, there's open source. We're kicking off other working groups in and around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's wrap up with a few random questions for you. You're in the Cape Cod area, right?
I graduated data science high school in 1985. My father retired here, and I couldn't leave it. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. So I'm going to do some Cape Cod related questions for you.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
So first, lobsters or oysters?
Oh yeah. So I'm an oyster guy. And we have oysters here on the Cape, and world famous Wellfleet oysters, obviously. We have a village of my town called Osterville, which is the old way of saying Oysterville. My wife and her friends have licenses. They go out, and they bring back oysters. And I moved here from Newport, Rhode Island, which is on Aquidneck Island, and they have Narragansett Bay oysters. And so sometimes I really, really miss my childhood home. I go get some oysters from Narragansett Bay and I eat them. So I think oysters are hyper local, and lobsters are Northeast. So I would say oysters.
Very fair. Very fair. I was on Nantucket a couple of years ago and had oysters there, and it was almost an out of body
Right.
experience.
So,
Yeah.
so by the way, can I tell you just a funny local story about Nantucket from a Cape Cod perspective? My sons play hockey, and so they were on the Cape Cod hockey all-star team, and the defensemen were all from Nantucket because the kids from Nantucket are very large. And our sort of joke is that the reason that they're large is because all the small people got eaten by the whales, and only the large people are left on Nantucket.
Nice. This is actually a perfect segue into my next question.
Okay.
Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard?
Oh yeah, yeah. So yeah, that for me that's an easy one. The difference between Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, the answer is the vineyard, for sure. Nantucket is only a failed Newport. Um, uh, Martha's Vineyard is around people in society. It's very um, earthy, crunchy. A lot of NPR happening on Martha's Vineyard. And Nantucket's full of New York. So
All right.
we have just seriously, we have all kinds of families who live in my town who take the plane and the ferry over to Nantucket because they can't afford to live in Nantucket.
Yeah.
Nantucket is a place that's been a victim of its own beauty. It's gorgeous, but there isn't a town. There's no houses on Nantucket that cost less than $1 million. Seriously, it's not.
Yeah.
None. So
No,
vineyard,
makes sense.
vineyard all day long. Yeah.
So, and then last question, sports question. So I'm in Denver, so this is super controversial for me.
Do you have sports in Denver?
A
Do
little
you?
bit.
A
little bit.
okay.
But-
All right.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So we're going to
Okay.
end this here then. All right. Red Sox versus the Celtics versus the Patriots.
Oh, you know what? So I'm actually going to I'm gonna mix it up with you.
Okay.
In my last startup, I was one of my investors was Rick Middleton, the captain of the Bruins. And so I'm going to go all Bruins on you because I really think that, Beantown, Bruins, hockey, drop the gloves, Boston, uh, working class. I think that would actually be my actual Boston answer. Although actually to be really honest about it. And you said there are sports in Denver, right? I heard you
I
say that.
think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. So actually my sport, the thing I really, really love is I'm a Newport native. I lived there 16 years and America's Cup, around the ocean race, Sail GPT. I grew up meeting Olympians from around the world. The Olympic Sailing Center for the United States is in Newport. And so I really took to sailing. My mother was a sailor. I really enjoy it. But again, I'm not meaning to be harping on this, but not a lot of sailing in Denver. Is there sailing in Denver? Is that a big thing?
No,
Yes.
there's a reservoir down the road, but that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no, but by the way, so my wife's from New Hampshire, and she and I go downhill skating all the time. But you actually have skiing over there, right? So I can't really say that there's nothing over in Denver because we don't have that. It's not our thing.
Yeah.
Not our thing.
Great having you on. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and we'll talk to you soon.
I love talking to you, Robert. Thanks for the time. Take care of yourself.